It is December 23rd, 2022, and tonight I want to look at my entire Criterion collection. Why? Because I can, and I like time capsule videos like these, and I think it'll be cool to look back at this in a couple years and say, oh my god, I had so few. Which is hilarious because I have a lot of them. And before we actually look at my collection, I actually wanted to get started with my non-Criterion edition films. So what I mean is I do have films that are in the Criterion collection, but I don't have the Criterion version. For example, The Heiress is in the Criterion collection, but I bought this years before it was included in the Criterion collection. So I have this, and, you know, along the way I'll mention if I want to get the Criterion. And The Heiress is one of my favorites, so I think eventually I will, but for right now, I just have this one. If you want to see just the Criterions, skip to this time code. In the meantime, here's some non-Criterion Criterions. First up, the big one. I have the entire Showa Godzilla series, not on Criterion. This took me years to collect because they were out of print, and so it's in a variety, and I kind of just want all the Japanese versions, and that packaging is awesome, and I know there's some dubbed versions on there, so I would like to have the Criterion version of the Showa series. That'll be one that's down the line, because right now I'm fine watching these, because these are the ones I grew up watching constantly. The Heiress, like I said before, love this movie. I'll probably get the Criterion at some point. In a Lonely Place. This was out of print for the longest time, so this is actually a Korean DVD with films that are out of print or really hard to find in Region 1. I usually try to find the Korean Region 0 DVD, and I bought this, and then I think a week later Criterion announced they were going to do it, so I was like, fuck. I'll probably get the Criterion at some point. It happened one night, one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't know if I'll ever get the Criterion. I am curious about the special features, but honestly, for me, at this point in my life, I care more about the movie than the special features. Sorry, guys. So the Philadelphia story is on my Katharine Hepburn TCM collection. Again, I don't know if I'll get the Criterion. I'm pretty content with this, and this has some pretty good special features on it already. Mildred Pierce is on my Joan Crawford TCM collection. This is one that I'm debating on getting on Criterion, just because of the Blu-ray, and yeah, I do want to see this film cleaned up a little, but I also like just a little film grain on my old movies. Sweet Smell of Success. I don't think I'll get the Criterion, although I've heard a lot of good things about it. Fun fact for the day, I named my first car Sidney Falco after the Tony Curtis character. As of filming this video, I just got rid of my first car, so I was sad to see him go. Some Like It Hot. I love this film to death. I have had this slim case version because I bought it off eBay and they didn't tell me it was a slim case, so I've had this for the longest time. I don't think I'll get the Criterion. There's a lot of great special features on here, but I've grown too attached to this one because this is one of the first old movies I ever owned. Oh, I did 2 Tony Curtis films in a row. That's cool. Shanghai Express. I know this is part of the von Sternberg Marlene Dietrich collection that they put out not too long ago, but I had gotten most of those films by themselves, so I'm just slowly getting all those films outside the set. On the Film Noir Spotlight collection from Universal, this is one of my favorite DVDs I own. I just want to say it's got 10 great film noirs on here, and 2 of them are on Criterion, one of which is The Killers, which is on a double feature with the remake, the Don Siegel one. I don't think I'll get that one, simply because I love the original Killers. I'm not a big fan of the Lee Marvin Don Siegel one. And another fun fact for the day is I named my new car Kitty Collins after Ava Gardner in The Killers. Paths of Glory. This is another one of the first movies I ever owned. Old movies I ever owned. Sorry, my dad bought it for me for Easter 2011. Yeah, I remember it that vividly because I saw this that morning and I was never the same afterwards. This was an incredible film, and I don't think I'll ever get the Criterion just because there's a lot of sentimental value in this copy because my dad gave it to me and it was a film that he knew that I was going to enjoy. So on my Rita Hayworth collection is Gilda, which of course is on Criterion, and I love Gilda, and I had the choice of either getting Gilda on Criterion or this set, and honestly, I just preferred the set. I wanted more movies. On this Tracy Hepburn collection, we have Woman of the Year, which is probably my favorite movie they did together. Maybe I'll get the Criterion, but right now I'm fine just viewing it on this great collection. And then on this fantastic box set, I actually bought this box set for Rawhide, but the Gunfighter I discovered on this set, and I know the Gunfighter was just on Criterion. It's a hard maybe. Now for some Mill Creek 50 packs. So on this horror pack, the first one I ever owned, there's Carnival of Souls and Night of the Living Dead. I will probably get both those at some point on Criterion, because the quality of them on here is not that great. I'll never get rid of this set because I love these sets because it's a great, convenient, if you ever want to riff tracks or Mystery Science Theater stuff by yourself with your friends, you got these, and I think these are cool. On the Dark Crime set, there's The Naked Kiss, which I love Samuel Fuller. Pretty much every film he's done I think is fantastic. And The Naked Kiss was one of the first movies I saw by him, but the quality on this is less than stellar, so I definitely want the Criterion. That's one I've been looking for a while. Another one that's on here is Detour, another one I desperately want on Criterion. The quality on this one is actually relatively good. I can just imagine what the restoration looks like, and I'm a big fan of Detour. Blood of a Poet was on Criterion, but now it's out of print, and I'm a huge John Cocteau fan. He did Orpheus and Beauty and the Beast. So the only way to get this is either out-of-print copies or this Korean DVD that I found. This is a pretty interesting film. If I could have gotten the Criterion with all three films, I would have, but I couldn't. In fact, I brought the other ones up here since I'm talking about it. This is Orpheus. This is the one everyone knows about. So this is the second in Cocteau's Orpheus trilogy. I'll talk about it a little bit more later. But then the last one is The Testament of Orpheus. Again, it's out of print, and so this is the only way I could get it. The Orpheus trilogy. Luckily, I have them. Being There. Funny story about this. I bought this and then watched it, and I hadn't seen it in a long time, and it was really, really profound seeing it a second time, and then I said, this would be a good Criterion film. And then they released it on Criterion like a couple months later, so I was like, holy shit, okay, I'm glad I predicted that one. One of my favorite DVDs I own is this TCM comedy set. Arsenic and Old Lace is one of my favorites, and it just got released on Criterion. I'll have to see how it is, because I still love watching it on this, and there's a lot of goodies on here. Charade, one of the first released on Criterion. It's always on and off whether or not it's on Criterion or not, so I think I'll just stick with this. This is a great DVD, and this is part of the Universal's 100 Years collection, so I like having this one. This was a budget buy. This is a Korean Chaplin collection, and it has 10 films of his, 8 of which are on Criterion. There's Limelight, Monsieur Verdoux, The Great Dictator, Modern Times, City Lights, The Circus, The Gold Rush, and The Kid. Now, when I bought this, I bought it for Limelight, because Limelight was out of print from the Chaplin collection and wasn't on Criterion yet. But all of these are in fantastic condition. This is a comedy triple pack with His Girl Friday and The Awful Truth, both on Criterion. I don't think I'll get the Criterion of these. I love these films. I'm content with them on here. All About Eve. Again, I bought this before the Criterion came out, and I love All About Eve, but this has got 2 discs and a ton of special features, so I just see no reason to get the Criterion version. This is a 20th Century Fox collection with 4 films on here, but the one on Criterion is Leave Her to Heaven. It looks fantastic. I'd like to see some samples of the Blu-ray because this is one of the most gorgeous color films ever photographed. So I think a Blu-ray of that would be fantastic. 12 Angry Men, another one of the first old movies I ever owned. I know it's on Criterion. Again, I just see no reason to update my collection to that one, so I like this. This sci-fi collection is great, and it has The Incredible Shrinking Man on there, which just got put onto Criterion, which I'm a big fan of that movie. Not a big enough fan to get the Criterion, because I think it's good enough to have it on this set. 3:10 to Yuma. I think this is a good film. It's one of the few times where I think I like the remake more. But this is still an outstanding film. In terms of the Criterion, I can't see myself getting the Criterion anytime soon. The Fallen Idol is a Carol Reed movie, whom you might know from The Third Man. This is one that's been out of print on Criterion for a while, and I love this film a lot, so this was the only way I can get it. This Alfred Hitchcock collection has all of his early films. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And the ones on here that are on Criterion are The Lady Vanishes, The Lodger, The 39 Steps, and The Man Who Knew Too Much. All four of which are great films. The only one I could see myself upgrading is The Lady Vanishes, because that's my favorite of the four. This Alec Guinness collection has Kind Hearts and Coronets, which is on Criterion. I don't see myself upgrading to that. Last Picture Show, big fan of this film, love it. It's a mad, 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 mad world. I think I would definitely get the Criterion just because that's the most complete version of this movie now. This movie's original runtime was about 4 hours, and then it was like over 3 hours for the premiere release, and then it was trimmed down to 2.5 hours or something like that. And this one's about 2 hours, 40 minutes, and I know the It's a Mad, 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 Mad World on Criterion is longer than this, so that might be it just because I'm a huge Stanley Kramer fan and I'd like to have all his films in their entirety. In the Heat of the Night, I bought this before it was on Criterion, big fan of this film, but I don't see myself getting the Criterion anytime soon. Imitation of Life, I go back and forth on which one I like better. The Claude Colbert one is on Criterion right now, I can't see myself buying that. High Sierra, Humphrey Bogart film. Love that film. So glad it's on Criterion. I think I'm fine having it on this set right here, though. Here Comes Mr. Jordan. I'm actually not that big of a fan of this movie. This was a gift, so sorry if they're watching. They're probably not. But I would not get the Criterion. This is good enough. Sony, Columbia/Sony usually does a good job restoring their old films. Harold and Maude. I heard this film is out of print on Criterion, so I'm glad I at least have this copy. Forbidden Games. Another one that's out of print on Criterion. I love this film. This is a Korean version. This is the only version I could find of this film. Fiend Without a Face. My parents went on, I think it was eBay, and they showed a picture of the Criterion DVD, but they sent us this instead. So I think I'll probably upgrade it eventually. Failsafe. This was another one I bought, and then it came out on Criterion not too long later, so I don't know if I'll get the Criterion. The Elephant Man. I bought this DVD over 10 years ago, and it was because there was no way to get The Elephant Man. It's since come out on Criterion. Maybe I'll update it, but in the moment I still like watching it on this one. There's some sentimental value with this one too. Dr. Strangelove, another one I bought before it was on Criterion. I just don't see any reason to. There's a lot of other films I'd rather own on Criterion. Local Hero is on this set and on Criterion, and I will not update it. Bringing Up Baby. Again, I bought this long before it was on Criterion. Big fan of the film. It's the 2-disc special edition, though, so I can't see myself updating this to the Criterion. WALL-E. This one just came out on Criterion, the first Pixar film, which is awesome. I don't see myself updating this one anytime soon. Flight of the Phoenix. This just got released on Criterion. I'm a big fan of this film, but I don't think I'll get the Criterion. Destry Rides Again. This is a good movie, but I don't see myself getting the Criterion. Amores Perros. I found this on accident while I was in a Barnes & Noble, and I saw it was $5, so I got it. And then, not too long later, they announced a Criterion. I was like, fuck, I should have gotten that one. This John Frankenheimer set has The Manchurian Candidate. I'm okay with just having it on here. Fantastic Mr. Fox. I can't see myself updating my collection anytime soon with that one. Antichrist. This was a gift from somebody, and it's a Blu-ray, so I just don't see a reason to update this copy to a Blu-ray. Traffic. This is another one where I don't see myself updating to the Criterion anytime soon. My Man Godfrey. I enjoy this one a lot, but this one's restored. This one has the colorized version. I can't see myself getting the Criterion. Holiday. I don't think I'll get the Criterion. I think Sony does a great job keeping their films in great shape. Now Voyager. I got this part of my Bette Davis box set, and they just released it. I think I'll stick with this, even though I think that's a fantastic film. Asphalt Jungle. This was part of my first film noir box set, one of my favorite box sets I have. I don't think I'll update to Criterion anytime soon, though. A Face in the Crowd. This was part of my Controversial Classics collection. I think this is a great film. I don't see myself ever getting the Criterion. They Live by Night, and this came on a Film Noir Volume 4 box set. I don't see myself ever getting the Criterion. Cat People. I love this film. This came on my Val Lewton collection. I may get the Criterion one day, but I'm fine with this for now. Uncut Gems. I bought this at the last Blockbuster on the planet in Bend, Oregon. So that alone is enough for me to keep this DVD. I love the Safdie brothers. I don't know if I'll ever get the Criterion, but this is one of my favorites just because it came from the last Blockbuster on the planet. War of the Worlds, another one of the first old movies I ever owned. I do think I'll get the Blu-ray. I think this is incredible. I love how it looks, and I can only imagine how it'll look in the new restoration they did. The Third Man, this one is no longer on Criterion, it's on Studio Canal. Spellbound, I would have to double check if this is on Criterion. I don't think it is, but either way I have it on this MGM DVD. Either way I have it on this MGM DVD right here that apparently I like throwing around. Silence of the Lambs. At the time I bought this, it was out of print on Criterion. It's back on now. I don't know if I'll ever get it on Criterion. Seven Samurai. This, again, was one of the first old movies I got. This was before I discovered Criterion at all. I will definitely upgrade this to the Criterion version, though. This is a great Blu-ray. Unfortunately, it's out of print, but it's got The Most Dangerous Game and Things to Come, both on Criterion. I don't know if I'll upgrade it, because it's on Blu-ray already and it looks fantastic. It's also the same Legends films that my man Godfrey is on, so there's a colorized version on here. And I think it's interesting, because Ray Harryhausen oversaw all the colorized versions of these and said that these were originally supposed to be shot in color, so it's an interesting experiment to see what the original filmmaker's vision was. Rosemary's Baby. Don't think I'll get the Criterion of this. This is a great set. This is the Preston Sturges collection. This has Sullivan's Travels, The Lady Eve, Palm Beach Story. So I'd gotten this when Lady Eve and Sullivan's Travels were out of print on Criterion and Palm Beach Story wasn't on there. So this was the only way to get like all of them in a uniform set. And I don't think I'll get the updated version. I love this set. I love it so much. And I love watching all the films on here. There's trivia on the inside too, right there on all the films. Peeping Tom, love Powell Pressburger. This is another one that is out of print, so I had to get it on here. Only Angels Have Wings. I should have just blind bought the Criterion. On the Waterfront. For the longest time, I didn't want the Criterion, but there was a Criterion closet I saw where they talked about how Criterion showed this film in different aspect ratios, and it changes the dynamic of certain scenes. So for that reason alone, I want the Criterion. Notorious, my third favorite Alfred Hitchcock film. When I bought this, it was unfortunately out of print on Criterion, but now it's back. But I think I'll just stick with this. Knights of Cabria is also out of print on Criterion, and it just so happens to be my favorite Federico Fellini film. Nightmare Alley. So this is part of the Fox Film Noir set. I love the Fox Film Noirs. They also have spines that are numbered. So I'm going to stick with this because I love the Fox Film Noir set. My Darling Clementine. This is another one that I bought way before it was on Criterion. I might get it just because I think there's deleted scenes, so I think they put those scenes back in. I'd have to double check. And then this Marlene Dietrich set has Morocco, Blonde Venus, and The Devil is a Woman. All three of those are on the Marlene Dietrich Josef von Sternberg collection, and so they're on here. Okay, so these are all my non-Criterion Criterions, so now on to the actual collection. Let's start out with some box sets. First we have the Carl Theodor Dreyer set. This has Day of Wrath, Orday, and Gertrude. I'm a big fan of his. Ingmar Bergman's Four Masterworks collection. This has Smiles of a Summer Night, The Seventh Seal, Wild Strawberries, and The Virgin Spring. The David Lean directs Noel Coward set. I'll be honest, I bought this just for In Which We Serve, because that was my favorite on here, but as time has gone by, I've grown to like Brief Encounter and Blythe Spirit a lot more. This Happy Breed is still good, but those other three are just so good it's unbelievable. Now for the Eclipse series that I have. I wish I had a lot more Eclipse series, but they just don't pop up at Barnes & Noble as much, and I know a lot of them are going out of print. When horror came to Shahiku? I don't know this. The only reason I bought this was because there was a monster book my dad had when I was a little kid, and it had a photo from the living skeleton in it, and as a really little kid, it freaked me out but also fascinated me, and for years I was trying to track down the film. So I got this just so I could see Living Skeleton, and if I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember anything about it. I think I saw it like 4 years ago when I finally got this, but I gotta rewatch it because I honestly can't remember anything about it. Raymond Bernard. When I was in high school, somebody told me that their favorite version of Les Mis was on this set, and when I saw this come up at Barnes & Noble, I bought it, and let me tell you, not only is Les Mis, Raymond Bernard's Les Mis my favorite version of Les Mis, but Wooden Crosses is one of the greatest World War I movies ever made, up there with West Front 1918 and All Quiet on the Western Front. The first film's a Samuel Fuller, my first ever Eclipse series, one of my first Criterions. I saw The Steel Helmet on TV a long time ago, one of the first old movies I saw. I loved it. My grandpa is a Korean War veteran, and there were really not too many stories of the Korean War being told, just throughout all of American history, so it was nice to see something that was brutally honest about the conflict that those men went through. And Baron of Arizona and I Shot Jesse James are great too, but The Steel Helmet always is breathtaking every time I see it. Now on to some other films. As before I mentioned, here's Orpheus. Night Train to Munich. This was a blind buy, but I like Carol Reed, and this is a really nice, fast-paced film. A Night to Remember, the movie that James Cameron ripped off. Just kidding. There are a lot of moments in here that you could tell Cameron was inspired by. There's just something so haunting about the black and white cinematography, but also calming. So this is the Titanic film I always revisit. Naked Lunch, my favorite David Cronenberg movie. Naked City. This one, I love Jules Dassin, but out of all his films on Criterion, this is the one I revisit the least. I know that's gonna probably stupefy some people, and film noir is my favorite genre, but yeah, this is the one that I don't revisit as much as the other ones. My Dinner with Andre, another one of my first Criterions. Moonrise. I love underrated B-movies. I love films that don't really get a wide release. And what I mean by that is there's so many old films that just don't get the proper release, and there's a lot of bad movies that are released commonplace nowadays, which is unfortunate. So it was great to see Criterion bring this one back. Ministry of Fear, one of my favorite covers. This is another great World War II B movie, directed by Fritz Lang. Big fan of this one, and I wish this one would come back into Criterion popularity because I think this is great. I might get the Blu-ray at some point because this was another blind buy. Make Way for Tomorrow. I also reviewed this one. This is the movie that Orson Welles said would make Stones cry, and I can concur. This is a great film. Magnificent Obsession. What I love about this edition, besides how gorgeous it looks, is the fact that they included the original 1932 version on here, and I love comparing, good versions of remakes and seeing their strengths and weaknesses. So it was really cool just to have both of them in one place. Magnificent Ambersons. This is one of the few times I actually did buy a Criterion, mostly for the special features, because the story behind this movie I like more than the film itself. There's a guy on Instagram who's chronicling trying to find the lost complete print with all the missing scenes of this, and I hope he finds it because I know he's making a documentary and that'd be cool to see. The Magician. This cover let alone is great, but the entire film is fantastic. I remember showing my friend Jackie this film, and she was kind of on the edge of her seat a lot, which is something you don't really associate with Bergman, but I think that just kind of proves what a great filmmaker he was, that he was able to dip his toes into all sorts of genres and make it work. Lonesome. This was one that was kind of hard to find on Criterion. I had seen it on TV, fell in love with it, and this edition is fantastic. It includes another Paul Verhoeven movie on there too, which is not as good. This is one of the best love stories on screen. It's just two people spending a day together, and I think more filmmakers need to take notes from this because this works really well. Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. Big fan of Powell and Pressburger. I've seen this film once, but I remember every frame of it. That's how mesmerizing this film was when I saw it. There's just nothing like the Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. It took me a while to figure out this was an hourglass. I just never paid attention to it. I always paid attention to that. Kaidan, which is probably one of the greatest horror anthologies ever made. I think it's really cool that this filmmaker took 5 Japanese folk tales, in the same vein of the Brothers Grimm, and brought them to the big screen. Koreniko? I might be pronouncing that wrong, but this is another one based off Japanese folklore. I won't say I'm the biggest fan or an expert on this subject, but I do find it fascinating exploring the folk tales of other cultures because, it's so interesting to hear the sort of stories that other people grew up with as opposed to like us with like Hansel and Gretel and Sleeping Beauty. Jubal. This was a blind buy. This one was by Delmer Davies. Yes, Delmer Davis. And then, uh-oh. Sacrilege. What is this? This is something I made back in elementary school, middle school. Some of you might be thinking, what is this? Did you pirate this? No, I didn't. Do you guys remember, like, you'd go to 7-Eleven or something, and they'd have just, like, little sleeves with DVDs in them? So that's how I got these. And I found Spirit of the Beehive in there. Spirit of the Beehive, I love. And I'm thinking about getting the DVD just because I know there's a second disc. And the idea of only having one disc is just kind of like, ugh. Why? The Innocents. This is one where I constantly compare it to The Haunting because it's very similar in that you don't know how much the house is haunted or how much of it's in the main character's head. I've read this book. Very hard book to read. Very hard book. It's written by the same guy who wrote The Heiress, the book for The Heiress, which I find fascinating. Not only that, but this was The Turn of the Screw. That's the book this is based off of. Mike Flanagan did his miniseries, The Haunting of Bly Manor, based off the Turn of the Screw book. And the same year there was a movie called The Turning that came out, which was also based off Turn of the Screw. So we had two adaptations of this in one year. The Importance of Being Earnest. This is a very good adaptation of Oscar Wilde. I like how it feels like a movie, but it also feels somewhat like a stage play. There's a certain aura that stage play adaptations from this time have that if you've seen them, you know what I'm talking about. But I enjoy that stuff a lot. I Know Where I'm Going. Powell and Pressburger again. Big fan of them. I read somewhere that the head of MGM, I think it was Dory Sherry, once said to Powell and Pressburger that whenever writers at MGM got stumped in the late 40s, they'd give them the script to this movie because they thought this was the example of the most perfect script ever written. House of Games, David Mamet. This was a blind buy. Did not disappoint, although I do want to revisit it because there's some aspects that I don't remember very clearly. Hobson's Choice. Charles Laughton is my favorite actor of all time, and this film propels why that statement is true. He is the greatest actor ever lived. He's hilarious in this. History's Made at Night. Again, this is another perfect example of why I love Criterion. This is a great film that had not been released in a while. It was in terrible condition. They came in, they cleaned it up, it looks beautiful, and an entire new generation of people have discovered it. I love this movie so much. I'm so glad it finally got a release. Green for Danger, a little bit of an out-there murder mystery, but I liked it quite a bit, and I'm a big Alistair Sim fan, so seeing him as a detective is always great. David Lean's Expectations, my favorite... Expectations? Great Expectations! I kind of dropped the ball on that one. This is my favorite adaptation of Great Expectations. The Furies. This is an Anthony Mann film. I'm a huge Anthony Mann fan. But also, I love that this version comes with the book. I wanted to get the shortcuts edition with the book, but my edition didn't come with it, unfortunately, but at least I got the book for this. Friends of Eddie Coyle. Peter Yates in the late 70s, early 80s. This was his time to shine, and this is one of the reasons he shines. 40 Guns. Again, Sam Fuller. The greatest part of this edition is there's a documentary called A Fuller Life on here, and I guess Sam Fuller had a diary of every day of his life, so they read from it. The different actors read from it, and it's fascinating hearing different people read passages from the same person. The Island of Dr. Moreau, another Charles Laughton movie. This is the first one I saw him in. This is not the film that convinced me he was the greatest actor of all time, but it's the one that made me notice him. Pygmalion, Anthony Asquith again. The original My Fair Lady. Wendy Hiller was in this, and I Know Where I'm Going, and The Elephant Man. And I think she's a great actress that, sadly, I don't think people talk about enough when they talk about the great British actresses. Fantastic Planet. This was another blind buy. This one is great. This one surprised me a lot. I thought it was just going to be weird for being the sake of weird, but it's a very excellent commentary. Diabolique. I had this as the background on my phone for a while, and this got a lot of people who I knew to watch it. Day for Night, my favorite Francois Truffaut film. David Lynch, The Art Life. This might be the only documentary I have from Criterion. I remember watching this in an art house cinema. And I remember being a little disappointed they didn't talk about his films, because I wanted to know about his films, but I, in repeated viewings, have come to appreciate the fact that it's just his life before film and his art, because I wasn't aware of how into painting he was and how that's kind of his first love. Clooney Brown, Ernst Lubitsch. Again, this was another one I was glad they released because it wasn't on DVD for the longest time. A Canterbury Tale, another Powell Pressburger film. This is one I gotta rewatch because, again, I love it, but I can't remember the ending for some reason. I've seen this film at least 10 times now. The Browning version, Anthony Asquith, again. I think this is his greatest film. Michael Redgrave gives what I think is his second best performance. My first best is in Dead of Night, which is on Kino. The Bridge, this was one I was curious in a while, and my buddy bought this at the Criterion sale, and we watched it together, and afterwards I had to get a copy of my own. The Breaking Point. Funny enough, I remember writing Warner Archive a letter back in the day, and they answered it on their podcasts, and I asked them why The Breaking Point was no longer on Warner Archive, and they said, we may or may not have some plans with that in the future. And then they announced this Criterion not too long later, so I was like, oh, okay. The Blob. One of my favorite Blu-rays just because I love the color of this. 82 minutes of concentrated motion picture terror in blood-curdling color. I don't know what voice that was, but it was pathetic. Black Orpheus. I think I like the Jean Cocteau version of Orpheus more, but this is also a great modern retelling. Black Narcissus. Another Powell Pressburger. Might get the Blu-ray at some point just because this is such a gorgeous looking movie. Bicycle Thieves, or The Bicycle Thief. Vittorio De Sica is somebody who I took for granted a lot, and then upon revisiting a lot of his films, I realized he is just a brilliant filmmaker. The Cameraman, one of my favorite Buster Keatons. This was on a set that had this and what's the other film? Spite Marriage, and then there was a third one. I just wish they had put that third one on here too, because that would have made this a complete kind of redistribution of the previous set that was so hard to get. Citizen Kane. This was a film my parents owned, and then Warner Brothers partnered up with Criterion to put it on Criterion, so I had to get my own copy. Alcazar Balthazar. I'm pronouncing that totally wrong. This is my favorite Robert Bresson film. I had a professor who loved Robert Bresson. He made us watch all of Bresson's biggest hits, but this is the one that I liked the most. Brute Force. This is one of my favorite Jules Dassin films. Probably my second favorite, but I've been influenced very heavily by this film. This film is just stunning in every aspect, and it's one that I always recommend for people. Beauty and the Beast. My favorite version, one of my favorite movies of all time. I wish they'd put out more Cocteau films. I'm not sure of the varying quality, but yeah, I'd like to see more Cocteau films on Criterion at some point, because I'm a huge fan of him. Anatomy of a Murder. This cover alone was worth getting, made it worth getting, simply because I know it's the poster, but it's still awesome. All That Heaven Allows. Many people say this is Douglas Sirk's best work, but I have to disagree. This is my second favorite. My favorite is also on Criterion, and we're going to get to it soon. All That Jazz, another one of my favorites. This is a great addition. Ace in the Hole. I'm a big Billy Wilder fan. This one took me a couple viewings to get. It's a bit slower. It's not as snappy as some of Wilder's other work, but if you give it a chance and succumb to its slower pace, and I mean slower in general, because Hollywood films, classic ones, people are always like, oh man, they're just so slow. It's like, yeah, some of them are, but this one is slower than average, I'd say, but it works so well because of how it builds throughout the entire film. 49th Parallel. This is another Powell Pressburger film. Young Mr. Lincoln. This was one I got on the older Criterion. You can see how thick it is. And it was re-released later on Blu-ray, so I kind of regret not getting the Blu-ray and waiting to get the Blu-ray, but I still think this is a great film, so I'm still happy I got it nonetheless. Valerie Weekend of Wonders. This was a blind buy. This is an interesting film. I suggest other people blind buy it just because it's such a unique experience, and I do like showing it to people. My girlfriend saw clips of this on Instagram, and she said to me, hey, I want to watch this. And I said, okay, have fun. She's like, you're not going to watch it without me? I was like, I'm going to watch you watching it. And let me tell you, that was a delightful experience. Written on the Wind is my favorite Douglas Sirk movie. I know they just re-released this. I bought this a long time ago, and there is some sentimental value on it, so I don't know if I'll upgrade it anytime soon, but I do love the color in this film. I really do. Unfaithfully Yours. This is another Preston Sturges film, which I believe this is the only way to get this film. It's not on that other pack that I had, because that's Universal. This is 20th Century Fox. But yeah, this is a great addition, and just a great film in general. Trouble in Paradise. This is another one that it took me a couple viewings to get. I'm happy I took the time to revisit it so many times, because it really is a good movie. I will say that I do like other Ernst Lubitsch films more, but there's a lot of stuff that's done in this film that I think is exceptional. West Front 1918. I remember watching this on TCM in 2014 because it was the 100th anniversary of World War I they were celebrating, and this was the only World War I film on there that I hadn't even heard of, and it fucking blew me away. And it wasn't available for so long, then Criterion did it, and this is an exceptional release. The Blu-ray is great. It's much better than the condition I saw it on TCM. Usually they have the most high-quality prints you can find. This one was great. White Dog, Samuel Fuller's last film. Film history is so cruel. This film wasn't even allowed to release because of the plot and content, but I think it is a interesting take on a story that would propel this message. Watership Down, another great animated film. This is one that my girlfriend refused to watch. She didn't like the idea of seeing bunnies mercilessly killed. In that opening, she thought it was a great way to explain to kids how predators and prey work, and how they feed the ecosystem. And the rest she thought was really good because it was less about humans torturing bunnies, which she thought it was going to be, and more about them just living in the wild. Wages of Fear. I know that Friedkin remade this as Sorcerer. This is by far the superior version. I'm sorry. I've gotten in this discussion with many people. I think this is the superior film. Thieves Highway, another great Jules Dawson film. Stray Dog, one of my favorite Kurosawas. One of the few that's not a period piece. La Strada, yeah, I know they re-released this recently, but this was one of those ones that was out of print for a little bit, and the Essential Art House version was the only way to get it. So I might get it, because this is definitely one of my favorite Fellinis. I'm a big fan of this film. Shock Corridor, another Samuel Fuller film. I really want the companion art of The Naked Kiss for this one, because I'm a big fan of that one. Shadows. My favorite Cassavetes film is also his first. I bought this way before I saw his other films, so that's why I have this one especially. I think this film is incredible for film history and just independent cinema in general. Secret Honor. I know a lot of people fight me on this, but I do think this is a great film. I think Philip Baker Hall gives a great performance. I know it's literally just one person talking the whole time, but I find films with very little cast members in very limited spaces talking fascinating. Seconds. You are never the same after you see this one. Safety Last, my favorite Harold Lloyd film, and a lot of people's favorite. Welcome to The Rock, Trebek. The Rock, Michael Bay's best film. I know that's weird for a lot of people, but this is a great film. I actually talked to Tony Todd, who is Candyman, and he's in this film. And I talked to him about this film, and I said to him, I was like, I'm a huge fan of you and The Rock. And he said, yeah, working with Michael Bay was great, but, glad to know I'm in his best movie. And I'll leave it at that. The River. I don't know if I'm a big Jean Renoir fan, but I love this film. There's something so intrinsic about this. Just everything that goes on. It's another one that every time I watch it, I get into kind of this hypnotic state. I kind of start forgetting about the plot. But this is one of those films where once I saw it, I knew I needed it on Blu-ray specifically. Riot in Cell Block 11. I reviewed this one too. This is a great Don Siegel film and a great Walter Wanger film. Ride the Pink Horse. There may or may not be a review of this one coming up. I'm a big fan of this film. I love the ending. There's just a lot of interesting set pieces in here that always catch my eye. The Player. Easily one of Robert Altman's best, and one I constantly revisit. Paris, Texas. This was a blind buy. It did not disappoint. Panique. This was another blind buy. I bought it strictly for the cover, and I thought this was a fantastic film. I will probably revisit and review down the road. The Game. This is a film that really did catch me off guard. I go between this and Zodiac and a couple others of what's my favorite Fincher film, but this one is definitely top 2 or 3. The Girl Can't Help It. This, I was so fucking happy when they released this. I was so damn happy. This is such an iconic encapsulation of the 50s, and there may or may not be a review coming out of this one soon. The Phantom Carriage. This is one that I'm not gonna lie, I saw this a long time ago on TCM. Don't remember what it was about, and I bought it recently, and I'm gonna rewatch it. But I do know that Ingmar Bergman was very much influenced by this film. Clute. This was one that I wanted to be re-released so badly, and I'm glad they did. This is an outstanding film and a great performance by Jane Fonda. She deserved that Oscar. A Dry White Season. This is a fantastic film. People need to talk more about this, and yeah, I think people don't talk about Donald Sutherland enough as an actor anymore, but he really steals some scenes in this movie. Now we're going to get to my absolute favorite Criterions. There's a lot of them. It's not like a top 10 or anything. It's just a bunch that I like. Double Indemnity. My favorite movie of all time. Had to get this on Criterion. Did not disappoint. Election. This is a very clever comedy. Alexander Payne is always somebody who he makes you think a lot when he's making you laugh, and I appreciate that a lot from comedy directors. Eraserhead. This one's great, but it also has a bunch of short films by David Lynch on here, so that alone makes it worth getting if you're a Lynch fan. His short films are just fascinating to watch. Foreign Correspondent. This is one of my favorite covers, one of my favorite Hitchcock films, and a review of this may or may not be coming soon. Eyes Without a Face. I need to upgrade this to the Blu-ray. I bought this right as they were kind of phasing out this version and the Blu-ray was coming out, but this is one of my all-time favorites. The ending especially, it always sticks with me. This might be my favorite Criterion of all time. Might. So this is the golden age of television. This has 8 live television plays. Everything was done live on kinescopes. I Love Lucy and a handful of other shows were the first ones to do it on film. And that's what revolutionized TV. But for a while it was just live theater. It was almost like live theater for an hour for every program. And back in the 80s on PBS, they had a week-long special called The Golden Age of Television, where they had a different broadcast each time and they had cast and crew talk about it. Not only was it great that they restored a bunch of pieces of history that are worth remembering. I love these live television plays. I really wish more had survived, but, you know, unfortunately that's how it works. We don't realize how valuable some of this stuff is until it's gone. But on top of that, they restored a television event. You know, it's one thing to save programs, but an entire event that people sat down for a week, that's something entirely special that can never be recreated. But yet, this comes so close. Swing Time. This is my favorite Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers film. The dances that they do, like this iconic dance right here, I think are some of their best routines, and I thought the story was the best out of all of them. A Special Day. Easily Mastriani and Loren's best performances. Story of Temple Drake. This is known as the film that broke the pre-code. It was so shocking that allegedly that was the final straw for people in the Hayes office and they brought in Joseph Breen. Or I should say the Catholic Legion of Decency brought in Joseph Breen. But this film is very shocking, and Miriam Hopkins delivers a very powerful performance. Pick Up on South Street. Samuel Fuller again. I know they just re-released it, but I like this version better, specifically for the cover. I think it fits the film's gritty tone more. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, my second favorite Altman film. My first is Gosford Park, which is not on Criterion, but this film it took me a while to get into. I watched it once, didn't like it, watched it again, it grew on me, and then the third time I thought it was a masterpiece. A Matter of Life and Death. I used to have the Film Foundation Scorsese version, because that was in great quality. But then when I found out there was a Blu-ray by Criterion, I had to get it. I just had to. I love this film so much. I reviewed this my first year doing reviews, and this was a film that I felt needed more recognition, and then thanks to Criterion, it got that recognition. Thank you so much for finally releasing this. Fritz Lang's M. Again, this is an older one. Look at how thick this boy is. M is one of my favorite movies of all time. Maybe one day I'll get the Blu-ray, because just visually it's stunning. Night of the Hunter, the definitive edition. This has never looked better than it has on this. And the scene where they're on the boat, especially, and you hear the little girl sing, is utterly fantastic. It's so surreal, but there's just really nothing like it. Night in the City, another one of my favorite Jules Dassin films. This was a blind buy. This was one of the only Dassin films I'd never seen, and once I did, I just couldn't believe I'd never seen it before. It's so good. The characters are great. Cinematography's great. Richard Widmark is one of my favorite actors of all time. This film just propelled him into even better territory for me. The Naked Prey. I saw this on TCM when I was a little kid, and it fascinated me. And I think that started my lifelong fascination for the African savanna. I've always had a fascination with the wildlife and the landscape, especially, of Africa. And I think it came from this movie. I think, because I saw this, I was really young. I had to have been at least 6, which, if you've seen the movie, you think, holy shit, you saw that at 6? And yeah, I did. My dad wanted to show me good movies, what can I say? I have 2 versions of this. This is the DVD of The Passion of Joan of Arc, one of my favorite films of all time, and then they did the Blu-ray, and I had to get the Blu-ray. So I got 2 of these. This one I take with me almost everywhere. This one I leave at home just in case. Princess Bride. The real reason I bought this, because I do love this movie, and I think this version is fantastic. Look at this. It is literally like a book. And it's got this great artwork. But the real reason I bought this is because my sister had The Princess Bride, and that's one of her favorites, so she would never give that one up. And so once I found out there was a Criterion, I just said to myself, I might as well get my own copy. Raisin in the Sun, great film all around. Sidney Poitier knocks it out of the park. Rest in peace, man. I miss you. Rashomon, another great film. This is one that when I saw it as a little kid, I hated it. I was in middle school, so of course I'm not gonna fucking understand something like this. So when I got older and I revisited it, I said, oh my god, no, this is great. Rafifi, another one of my favorite films of all time. This is my favorite Jules Dassin film by far. The 40-minute scene where there's no dialogue and they're robbing the place, that scene has had such a big impact on me, and I don't think I saw cinema the same way again. This is one of those game changers for me. The Red Shoes, my favorite Powell Pressburger film. So why I watched this to begin with, because I'm not a big fan of ballet, or at least I wasn't until I saw this. Afterwards, I did gain a little bit of a fascination / interest, but the big reason I saw this was because George Romero, who was the director of Night of the Living Dead, I was getting into some more adult, explicit horror films. I just stopped watching the black and whites, and I started watching like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. And I liked the Of the Dead, series by George Romero a lot. And when I read on IMDb that he said the reason he became a filmmaker was because of this film, I said, oh, I gotta watch this horror film. And then I saw it wasn't a horror film. But since I was so taken by Romero's work, I said, okay, let me watch this. Maybe there's something here. And it was so right. So sometimes going out of your comfort zone and stuff you don't like, or you don't think you're going to like, leads to some of the greatest discoveries. So, in other words, get the hell off Netflix and watch some other stuff, guys. Sex, Lies, and Videotape. This is another film that I like, but I can't articulate why I like it. There's just something about this film that draws me in every time I watch it. Shortcuts, another great Altman film. I wish I had the book, which had a lot of the short stories this was inspired by. But anyway, I still have the movie, and, that's kind of the whole point. Thief of Baghdad. Again, I wasn't a big fan when I saw this the first time. Then I rewatched it, and yeah, it's a great movie. Everyone should see this. To Be or Not to Be, probably the funniest Criterion cover ever. Look at this. That is a great way of interpreting the film. Stagecoach. I just rewatched this with my dad. Did not disappoint. This is a masterclass in how to juggle multiple characters and have them fully developed so that by the end, you know everyone. Because that's a problem with a lot of movies, is that people have too many characters they don't know how to work with, and then by the end you just have tons of characters where you say, oh, well, who is this person again? But you remember every single person in that Stagecoach, and there's about 8 or 9 of them. I just cracked this one just now. This one has been in my collection forever. This was probably the first Criterion I ever owned. 2013, yeah, that sounds about right. I remember I saw this film on TCM, I fell in love with it, and I knew I had to have it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I think 6 months later, they released it on Criterion. And I think I got this with and Eyes Without a Face. I think those were my first two. This film has inspired me a lot. This is one of my favorite covers, and this is one that I try to share with people, but they think it's going to be a lot more hardcore than it is, but it's not. But this is easily one of my favorites. Wings of Desire. This is the film that introduced me to Wim Wenders, and this film was a big help with my senior thesis. My thesis had a lot of narration, and the narration in this I think is really good. And here we are, my favorite Ernst Lubitsch film, Heaven Can Wait. Yeah, a review's definitely coming of this one soon. I love the color, I love the Lubitsch touch, and I love how snappy it is, and I love the side characters. This is one that I bought, and then they came out with a Criterion. I knew I should have waited, but I just wanted it again so badly. This is one that I always love watching. Haxan. Another one of my first Criterions. I remember I saw the stop-motion scenes from this on someone's video about silent films, and that intrigued me, and that's what made me want to watch it. So I got it, and it's one that I know a lot of people say is slower paced, but I disagree. I think this is fascinating, and each individual story has its own pace. The Killing, one of my favorite Kubrick films. This is another film I saw, didn't like it, revisited it, and then realized what a masterpiece it was, and I love the cover. This is at a time where most Criterion covers are just black and then like a grayish-white figure in the middle. Inside Llewyn Davis, probably my favorite Coen Brothers movie, probably one of my favorite movies of all time. I love this film, and I don't know why, I can't articulate it perfectly, but I have shown so many people this film, and everyone falls in love with it. I don't know what it is, but this film needs more love. People need to talk about this one more. High and Low, another one of my favorite Kurosawa films. This one is just masterfully done on so many levels. House. This is a crazy film. I actually got this because of a trade. Somebody wanted a copy of a out-of-print DVD I had, and he offered to give me House, so I got this. I probably would have got it eventually, but dude, this is a crazy movie. I love showing people this. This is the great movie you sit back and go, hey guys, let's just have fun and laugh, and you watch this. I Married a Witch, another one of my favorite covers. Love Veronica Lake, love this film. This is another one that deserves more love. Oh, and the behind the scenes on this is fantastic, look it up. And the last one I have to spotlight is La Cage aux Folles. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I know it's a French film, and it was remade famously as The Birdcage with Nathan Lane and Robin Williams, so if you're a fan of that film, check out this one. This is a very good film. Alright, so that was my Criterion collection. I have, as of right now, 142 films from the Criterion collection. I totally forgot to count my other versions, so I'll put that total on the screen and then total them out, and then I'll do a little Christmas update, because I have a feeling, because Christmas is in 2 days, I have a feeling I've got one or two more. Alright, it's after Christmas, and I just got my stuff, and I only got one Criterion for Christmas. I was surprised at the one I got. I got Tanner 88, which I'm a big fan of this miniseries. It's by Robert Altman, as you can tell, and I've met Veronica Carlson, who was in it, and I asked her all about it. I think it was a very fascinating mockumentary. So this is another great one to add to the collection, so that makes it 143 for Criterions for me.